All right, guys. Today we're gonna review how to factor trinomials with no lead coefficient. Okay, so if you think back, trinomial means three terms: one, two, three, and no lead coefficient means there's no number in front of your x squared. Okay, so the first thing you want to do when you factor a trinomial with no lead coefficient is create your chart. All right, so we want three columns, we want a plus, and we want a minus. All right, now remember in your first column, you want to take your first number, which in this case is 1, times your last number, 28. So 1 times 28, that's going to give us 28. Now down that first column, we're going to write all of the factors of 28. So 28 and 1, 14 and 2, 7 and 4. And that's all of them. In our middle column, we're going to add those factors. 28 plus 1 is 29. 14 plus 2 is 16. 7 plus 4 is 11. And then in our minus column, we're going to subtract. So 28 minus 1 is 27. 14 minus 2 is 12. 7 minus 4 is 3. All right. Then from here, we want to look for our middle term. Okay, so if you notice, our middle term is 11x. So we are going to look for 11. There's our 11. Okay, now I'm just going to bring my problem over here. X plus 28. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those two numbers that gave me 11. Okay, now if you notice, the two numbers that gave me 11 were 7 and 4. So I'm going to break up my 11x as 7x and 4x. Now, the next thing I want you to notice is that 11 fell under the plus column. If you think back, the plus column tells us that they are going to be the same sign. It doesn't tell us what the sign is, it just tells us that the sign is the same. So that means we're either going to have plus 7x and plus 4x, or minus 7x and minus 4x. All right, so to figure out which one, we're going to look back at our 11x. If you notice, our 11x is a plus, so that tells us we want plus 7x and plus 4x. All right, since we didn't do anything with our first term or our last term, we're just going to bring those down. Now, the reason we did all of this is so that we could have four terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. Because as you know, when you have four terms, you can factor by grouping, which is what we are going to do next. Okay, so our first step in factoring by grouping is to group it into two groups. Your first two terms and your last two terms. All right, now from each of those groups, we're going to take out our GCF. All right, so if you look here, the only number we can take out of both of these is a 1. They both have an x, so we can also take out an x. So we're taking out 1x. Then we have to write what that's going to leave us. So 1 divided by 1, that gives me 1. I have two x's. I take away 1. That leaves me with 1x. 7 divided by 1, that gives me 7. X, take away x. That doesn't leave me with any x's, so I'm going to close up my parentheses. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. The only thing that goes into both 4 and 28 is 4. Now notice this time they don't both have x's, so I can't take out an x. 4 divided by 4, that leaves me with 1. I didn't take away the x, so I leave it. And then 28 divided by 4 is 7. Now if you look, 1x plus 7, 1x plus 7. They match. So that tells us that we did it correctly. So our last step is just going to be to write our two factors. So our first factor is what we took out. 1x plus 4. Our second factor is what we had left when we took out that 1x plus 4, and that would be what's on the inside here, 1x plus 7. And you're done. That's your answer. X plus 4, x plus 7. Okay. Now we're going to do the exact same thing over here on number 2. Okay, so we know it is a trinomial, 1, 2, 3, with no lead, so I'm going to create my chart. I have my plus, I have my minus. My first term is a 1, my last is a 35. So 1 times 35, that gives me 35. From here, I'm just going to find all of the factors of 35. So I have 35 and 1, and then I have 7 and 5. Okay, 35 and 1, 7 and 5, that's it. So now I'm going to add them together to get my middle column. 36 and 12. Then I'm going to subtract them to get my last column, 34 and 2. All right, now if you think back, again, we are looking for our middle number. Our middle number here is 2, and here is our 2. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my problem over here, 2x minus 35. And then I'm going to look, what two numbers gave me that 2? Well, that'll be 7 and 5. So I'm going to break up my 2x as 7x and 5x. What's different this time is that it now falls under the minus column. So all that means is we now have different signs. Last time we had the same sign. This time we have different signs. Doesn't tell us what the signs are, just that they're different. So what we're going to do now is figure out what those signs are. So we have two options, a positive 7x and a negative 5x, or a negative 7x and a positive 5x. Okay, so 7x minus 5x, that's going to give me a positive 2x, and negative 7x plus 5x, that gives me a negative 2x. You look back at the problem, we want a positive 2x, so I'm going to pick this top option right here. So then I'm going to fill in my signs. Positive 7x, negative 5x. Again, I didn't do anything with my first or last term, so I'm going to bring those down. Just like last time, we now have 4 terms, so we can factor by grouping. First 2 terms, last 2 terms. The only thing that goes into both x squared and 7x is 1, and then we can take an x out of both of those, 1x. All right, from there, we're going to see what we have left. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 2 x's, take away 1x, that leaves me with x. 7 divided by 1 is 7. X, take away x, that leaves me with nothing, so I'm going to close it up. Then I'm going to look at my second group. I have negative 5x minus 35. The only thing that goes into both negative 5 and negative 35 is negative 5. Just like before, I can't take out an x because I don't have an x right here with my 35. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to write what I have left. Negative 5 divided by negative 5 leaves me with 1. I didn't take away any x's, so I still have an x. And then negative 35 divided by negative 5 leaves me with a positive 7. I need to check, do they match? 1x plus 7, 1x plus 7. Yes, they do. So then my last step is just to write my answers. Now remember, your first answer is what you took out, 1x minus 5. And your second answer is what you had left when you took that out, your 1x plus 7. And then you are done. 1x minus 5, 1x plus 7. Okay. So let's continue. All right, continuing on. Number 3. Again, we have a trinomial with no lead, so I'm going to create my chart. My first number is 1. My last number is 15. 1 times 15 is 15. Okay, so then I'm going to write all of my factors of 15. I have 15 and 1, 5 and 3. Okay, so that is all of them. And I'm going to start my chart. In my middle column, I'm going to add them. 15 plus 1 is 16. 5 plus 3 is 8. In my last column, I'm going to subtract them. 15 minus 1 is 14. 5 minus 3 is 2. Now, just like before, I'm going to look for my middle number inside my chart. If you look, your middle number is 8. Here's your 8. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite my problem over here. X squared minus 8x plus 15. And then what two numbers gave me that 8? Well, that'd be 5 and 3. So I'm going to break up my 8x as 5x and 3x. Now, just like the first problem we did, it falls into the plus column. So if you remember, that tells us that they are the same sign. It does not tell us what the signs are, just that they are the same. We have to look at the 8 to figure out what they are. So if you look at the 8 is a negative. So both of these are going to be negative. Negative 5x and negative 3x. Just like before, we're going to bring down our first term, we're going to bring down our last term, and that's going to give us a total of 4 terms. If you remember, when we have 4 terms, we can factor by grouping. So we're going to break it up into 2 groups, first 2 terms, last 2 terms, and then we're going to find the GCF of both groups. Okay, so the only thing that goes into x squared and negative 5x is a 1. We can take out an x from both of those, so that gives us 1x. Then we're going to write what we have left. 1 divided by 1 is 1. 2x's take away 1x, that leaves us with x. Negative 5 divided by 1 is negative 5. X take away x leaves us with no x's. Then we're going to do the same thing for the other group. If you look, what goes into negative 3x and 15? Well, that'd be negative 3. Can't take out an x, so it's just negative 3. Then I divide. Negative 3 divided by negative 3, that gives me 1. I'm going to bring down my x. 15 divided by negative 3 is a negative 5. Okay, now do they match? 1x minus 5, 1x minus 5? Yes, they do. So I can write my 2 factors. My first factor is what we took out, 1x minus 3. And my second factor is what we had left, 1x minus 5. And you are done. X minus 3, x minus 5. All right, so that was a quick review of factoring when you have a trinomial with no lead coefficient. The last thing that we're going to review is our special cases. Okay, so if you remember, the only special case that we've learned so far is your difference of perfect squares. Okay, difference of perfect squares. Now, technically, we could factor this using the chart, put 1 times 36, and then look for your middle number, which is 0. But we learned a little trick in class. Okay, so to do that trick, what we did was we took the square roots of both parts. All right, so the square root of x squared gave us x. The square root of 36 gave us 6. And then we wrote that 2 times. X and 6, x and 6. Then in between them, we put a plus and a minus, and you're done. Okay, now remember, you can factor it using your chart like we did the last 3, but because it is a difference of perfect squares, we can use the little trick where you take the square root, put plus and minus.